In 2008, inside a private room at Neverland, Michael Jackson suddenly looked at his father and whispered 5 words that froze everyone in place. "I'm going to die." No joke, no smile, no music in the background, just silence and fear. What happened next would change the Jackson family forever, and the world would never learn about it until years later. Why did Michael say that? What did Joseph Jackson do in response? And what secret conversation followed that still haunts the people who were in that room? This is a story no one was ever supposed to hear. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss our emotional stories about Michael Jackson. Neverland Ranch, spring 2008. The afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of the private sitting room, casting golden patterns across the floor. Michael Jackson sat on the edge of the sofa, unusually still, his fingers interlocked, his eyes distant. Joseph Jackson had arrived unannounced that morning. He stood near the fireplace, arms crossed, studying his youngest son. There was something different about Michael that day, something heavy, unsettled, as if he were carrying a storm inside his chest. For several minutes, no one spoke. Then Michael lifted his head. "Dad, I need to tell you something." Joseph nodded slowly. "What is it, son?" Michael swallowed, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm going to die." The room went silent. Even the birds outside seemed to pause. Joseph's jaw tightened. "What kind of talk is that?" Michael didn't blink. "I'm serious." Joseph stepped closer. "You've been exhausted. You're under stress. You're not thinking straight." Michael shook his head. "No, this is different. I feel it." Joseph searched his son's face, trying to find a Michael he had known for decades. The performer, the fighter, the survivor. But what he saw now was something far more fragile. "Why would you say that?" Joseph asked. Michael's eyes filled with something that looked like fear. "I've been having these dreams," he said. "Not like normal dreams. They feel real, like I'm watching my life from the outside." Joseph's voice hardened. "Dreams don't mean anything." Michael stood up slowly. "They do to me." He began pacing the room. "I see myself on stage. The lights are bright. The crowd is screaming. But I can't hear them. And then everything goes quiet. Too quiet." Joseph watched him carefully. "You're scaring yourself." Michael stopped in front of him. "No," Michael said. "I'm warning you." Joseph's heart skipped. "What are you trying to say?" Joseph demanded. Michael hesitated, then whispered the words that would echo in Joseph's mind forever. "I don't think I have much time left." Joseph felt the air leave his lungs. He grabbed Michael's shoulders. "Listen to me. You are Michael Jackson. You've beaten everything this world threw at you. You're not going anywhere." Michael looked into his father's eyes. "I wish I believed that." The door opened suddenly. Catherine Jackson stepped inside. She took one look at their faces and knew something was terribly wrong. "What's happening?" she asked. Joseph turned toward her, his voice unsteady. "He says he's going to die." Catherine rushed to Michael. "Michael, what do you mean?" Michael closed his eyes. And then he told them something that neither of them were ready to hear. Catherine closed the door behind her and crossed the room in slow, careful steps. The tension in the air was so thick it felt like something you could touch. Michael stood near the window, his back to both of them, his reflection faintly visible in the glass. "What are you trying to tell us?" Catherine asked, her voice trembling. Michael didn't turn around right away. "I've been feeling strange," he said. "Not sick, not tired, just wrong. Like something inside me is changing and I don't know how to stop it." Joseph folded his arms. "You've always been sensitive, Michael. Stress can do things to the mind." Michael finally turned. "This isn't stress." He moved closer to them, his eyes full of urgency. "I wake up at night, and I feel like my heart is beating too fast, then too slow. I feel like I'm leaving my body. I see things that haven't happened yet." Catherine's hand flew to her mouth. "Michael, I know it sounds crazy," Michael said quickly, "but I swear to you this is real." Joseph stepped forward. "What exactly are you seeing?" Michael hesitated, then spoke. I see ambulances, hospitals, people crying. I see myself lying on a bed, and I can't move. Catherine began to cry softly. Joseph shook his head. No, no, that's just fear talking. Michael's voice broke. I don't feel afraid. I feel certain. The word hung between them like a blade. Joseph paced the room. You're working too hard. You're not sleeping. Anyone would start imagining things. Michael whispered, What if it's not imagination? Joseph stopped. The silence was unbearable. Catherine reached for Michael's hand. Come sit with me. They sat together on the sofa. Michael's hands were cold. Tell me everything, Catherine said. Michael spoke for nearly an hour. About the dreams. About the moments of dizziness. About the strange sense of time slipping away. About the sudden memories of his childhood, as if his mind were replaying his life in fast forward. Joseph listened, his face growing darker with every word. This ends tonight, Joseph finally said. Tomorrow I'm calling doctors. The best ones. You're not going through this alone. Michael nodded, but his eyes were distant. Later that night, Joseph stood outside Michael's bedroom, listening to the faint sounds of movement inside. He hadn't felt this kind of fear since Michael was a child, standing on a stage that was too big for him. Joseph whispered to himself, he can't go. Not now. Inside the room, Michael lay awake staring at the ceiling, his heart pounding. He whispered, Please, not yet. Outside, thunder rolled across the hills of Neverland, and none of them knew that this was the beginning of the final chapter of Michael's life. The fear they felt that night would soon become something much more real. Joseph Jackson did not sleep that night. He sat alone in the dark living room of Neverland, the only light coming from the faint glow of a lamp in the corner. His hands were clasped together, his elbows resting on his knees, his mind running through every memory of Michael he had ever carried. He had seen his son endure things no child should ever face. He had seen him break world records, break barriers, break hearts. He had seen him collapse from exhaustion and rise again stronger. But what he had heard that afternoon, that was different. I'm going to die. Those words echoed in Joseph's head like a slow, relentless drumbeat. He told himself Michael was just overwhelmed. He told himself it was fear. He told himself it was the pressure of the comeback, the rehearsals, the expectations. But something in Michael's eyes had shaken him. Not panic, not hysteria. Certainty. Joseph stood and walked slowly through the hallway, past the framed photographs of his children, past the awards, the plaques, the images of a family that had conquered the world. He stopped outside Michael's bedroom door. The house was silent. Joseph raised his hand to knock and stopped. Inside, Michael was sitting on the edge of his bed, his head in his hands. His body felt heavy, like gravity itself had turned against him. His heart beat unevenly, and each breath felt deeper than it should, as if his lungs were working against time. He whispered to himself, Why do I feel like this? He closed his eyes and the images returned. A hospital room, white walls, the sound of a monitor, his mother crying, his father standing frozen at the foot of the bed. Michael's chest tightened. He stood and opened the window, letting the cold night air rush in. The sky above Neverland was clear, filled with stars. For a moment, he felt strangely calm, as if part of him were already somewhere else. A soft knock finally came at the door. Michael turned. Come in. Joseph stepped inside. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Joseph studied his son. The frailness in Michael's posture disturbed him. This was not the man who had commanded stadiums. This was not the warrior he had raised. Sit with me, Michael said quietly. Joseph did. They sat on the edge of the bed, the distance between them smaller than it had been in years. You really believe what you said earlier? Joseph asked. Michael nodded. Why? Joseph pressed. Michael hesitated, then spoke slowly. Because I feel like my body is warning me. Like it knows something my mind hasn't accepted yet. Joseph shook his head. You're 39 years old. You're not dying. Michael turned to him. Then why do I feel like I'm running out of time? Joseph didn't answer. Michael's voice softened. Do you remember when I was little, and I used to tell you I was scared before going on stage? Joseph nodded. You always told me fear meant I was alive, Michael said. But this isn't fear. Joseph swallowed. What is it then? He asked. Michael looked him straight in the eyes. It's goodbye. Joseph felt something crack inside his chest. You don't get to say that, Joseph said, his voice rising. Not like this. Michael's eyes filled with tears. I'm not trying to scare you. Then stop, Joseph snapped. Michael flinched. Silence fell between them, heavy and painful. Joseph exhaled, running a hand over his face. I'm calling doctors in the morning. We're getting you checked from head to toe. Michael nodded. That's fine. But his eyes said he already knew what the doctors would not. Joseph stood to leave, then paused at the door. Michael, he said without turning around, you've beaten everything life ever threw at you. You're not going anywhere. Michael whispered, I hope you're right. Joseph left. Inside the room, Michael lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the slow rhythm of his heart. Far away, thunder rolled again, and for the first time in his life, Michael Jackson felt truly, deeply uncertain of tomorrow. What Joseph would do the next morning would change the course of everything. Morning arrived at Neverland without mercy. The sun rose golden over the hills, birds singing as if nothing in the world were wrong. But inside the house, the atmosphere was heavy, charged with fear that had not slept. Joseph was already on the phone by 7 a.m. He didn't waste time. Within hours, 2 private physicians arrived, followed by a cardiologist and a neurologist flown in from Los Angeles. Michael watched from the top of the staircase as they entered, carrying briefcases and calm expressions, their voices steady, professional. To them, this was another high-profile patient. To Michael, it felt like a trial. He went through test after test. Blood drawn, heart monitored, reflexes checked, questions asked in clipped medical language. Any dizziness? Chest pain? Shortness of breath? Changes in sleep? Medication usage? Michael answered everything honestly. Yes. Sometimes. Frequently. Almost every night. Yes. They scribbled notes. Joseph stood nearby, arms crossed, watching every movement. By mid-afternoon, the doctors gathered in the study. Michael sat on the edge of a chair, hands folded. Catherine stood behind him, one hand resting on his shoulder. Joseph faced the doctors. Well, Joseph asked. The cardiologist spoke first. From a clinical standpoint, his tests are mostly within normal limits. Elevated stress, signs of exhaustion, but nothing immediately life-threatening. Joseph exhaled sharply. So he's fine. The neurologist nodded. We recommend rest, reduced workload, better sleep hygiene. He's under immense psychological pressure. Joseph turned toward Michael. You hear that? Michael nodded, but his face remained distant. Catherine leaned forward, but he feels something is wrong. The doctors exchanged looks. Feelings can be powerful, the cardiologist said gently, but they don't always reflect the body's condition. Michael's voice was soft but steady. They don't understand. Joseph looked at him. What don't they understand? Michael raised his eyes. That this isn't in my head. The doctors left that evening convinced the case was closed. Joseph believed them. Michael did not. That night, he wandered alone to the gardens of Neverland. The fountains whispered, the wind moved through the trees, and the moon hung full above him. He pressed his hand to his chest, breathing slowly. Something inside him felt wrong. Not pain, not sickness. A deep, unexplainable knowing. He whispered into the darkness. What are you trying to tell me? No answer came. The next weeks were a blur of rehearsals, planning meetings, phone calls, expectations. The comeback tour loomed like a mountain on the horizon. Michael tried to keep pace. But the feeling did not leave. It intensified. Some nights he woke gasping, heart racing, convinced something terrible had just happened, or was about to. He began writing letters he never sent, notes to his children, reflections on life, apologies for things long past. Joseph noticed. You've been quiet, he said one evening as they walked together along the path near the lake. Michael shrugged. Just thinking. About what? About everything. Joseph stopped. You're not dying, son. Michael looked at him with sadness. How do you know? Joseph's jaw tightened. Because I refused to accept it. Michael didn't argue. Weeks later, during a rehearsal in Los Angeles, Michael collapsed to one knee, breathless. The room went silent. Are you okay? Someone shouted. He nodded, forcing a smile. Just tired. But Joseph, watching from the side, felt a chill crawl up his spine. That night, Joseph called Michael. You scared me today. Michael's voice on the other end was calm. I told you. Joseph closed his eyes. And for the first time, Joseph began to believe that something was truly wrong. What Joseph would discover next would terrify him and confirm everything Michael had been trying to say. Joseph Jackson had spent his life reading people. Promoters, managers, doctors, executives. But now, for the first time, he was studying his own son with the same intensity. And what he saw frightened him. Michael's weight was dropping. His eyes carried a distant look, as if part of him were already walking somewhere Joseph could not follow. His hands trembled when he thought no one was watching. Joseph began paying attention to everything. One afternoon, while Michael slept, Joseph quietly entered his bedroom. The curtains were half drawn, the room bathed in gray light. On the nightstand lay a small stack of notebooks. Joseph hesitated, then picked one up. It was filled with dates. Beside many of them were short phrases written in Michael's careful hand. Strange feeling. Heart racing again. Dream of hospital. Can't explain this. Time feels short. Joseph's throat tightened. He flipped through another notebook. Drawings. Michael had sketched himself standing alone on a stage. Spotlight overhead, the audience fading into darkness. On another page, a hospital bed. On another, a figure standing at the edge of a cliff, looking out at the stars. Joseph sat on the edge of the bed, his hands shaking. This was not imagination. This was obsession. This was a man preparing himself for something he believed was inevitable. Later that night, Joseph confronted him. What are these? He asked, placing the notebooks on the table between them. Michael froze. You went through my things? Joseph ignored the question. Why are you writing this? Michael looked down. Because I'm trying to understand it. Joseph slammed his hand on the table. Understand what? Michael whispered, What's coming? Joseph stood, pacing. You're scaring yourself. You're feeding this. Michael shook his head. No, I'm listening. Listening to what? Joseph demanded. Michael met his eyes. To my body, to my soul. Joseph felt anger rising. You're not a prophet. You're human. Michael smiled sadly. Exactly. Silence fell between them. Joseph softened his tone. Tell me the truth. Are you in pain? Michael thought for a moment. Not pain. It's more like a pulling. Like I'm being called somewhere. Joseph's blood ran cold. That night, Joseph made another call. Not to doctors. To a private investigator. I need to know everything about the people around my son, Joseph said. Every doctor, every assistant, every prescription, everything. The investigation began quietly. Within days, the reports came in. Michael was being given medications far more powerful than Joseph realized. Sedatives, painkillers, sleep aids, combinations that could affect the heart, the nervous system, the mind. Joseph stormed into Michael's room. Who's giving you these? He demanded, throwing the list onto the bed. Michael stared at the papers. They help me sleep. They could kill you, Joseph shouted. Michael's voice cracked. I'm so tired, Dad. I just want the noise to stop. Joseph sat beside him. We'll fix this. I promise. Michael looked up, tears in his eyes. I don't think you can. Joseph's chest tightened. Don't say that. Michael whispered. That's why I said what I said. Joseph finally understood. Michael wasn't predicting his death. He was watching it approach. And now Joseph was watching it too. What Joseph decided to do next would push the family into open war and bring Michael to the edge of everything he feared. The argument that followed shook the walls of the house. Not because voices were raised, but because truths were. Joseph closed the door behind him and faced Michael in the quiet of the study, the late afternoon light cutting long shadows across the floor. On the desk between them lay the investigator's report, pages of prescriptions, names, dates, dosages. "This ends," Joseph said. "Today." Michael didn't respond. He sat on the edge of the couch, shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on the carpet, as if it were safer to look at anything except his father's face. "You don't get to decide that," Michael whispered. Joseph moved closer. "I'm your father. I decide when something is killing you." Michael flinched at the word. "Killing?" Joseph softened his tone. "Son, you're drowning. I can see it." Michael lifted his eyes. They were wet. "I told you I feel like I'm running out of time." "That doesn't mean you give up on living," Joseph replied. Michael stood. "You don't understand what it's like inside my head." Joseph met him eye to eye. "Then make me understand." Michael's voice trembled. "It's loud. All the time. The world wants something from me every second. The memories, the expectations, the mistakes, the future. It never stops." Joseph listened, heart heavy. "I don't sleep," Michael continued. "When I do, I dream of hospitals, of lights going out, of everyone I love standing around me and I can't reach them." Joseph swallowed hard. "And the medicine?" Joseph asked. "It makes it quiet," Michael said, "for a little while." Joseph reached for him. "That quiet could take your life." Michael pulled away. So could the noise. They stood there, two men trapped in love and fear, neither willing to surrender. That night, Joseph called Catherine. "We need help," he told her. "Real help." Catherine agreed. The next morning, the family gathered at Neverland. Brothers, sisters, old friends, trusted advisors. Michael sat in the center of the room like a boy again, surrounded by people who loved him and didn't know how to save him. "We're worried about you," Catherine said gently. Michael nodded. "I know." "Then let us help," she said. Michael looked around the room. "I don't want to be a problem." Joseph stepped forward. "You are not a problem. You are my son." Michael's breath caught. They agreed to restructure everything. The doctors, the schedule, the medications, the tour timeline. Michael would rest. He would be monitored. He would not be alone. For a moment, hope flickered, but the pressure outside the walls was relentless. Contracts, deadlines, rehearsals, the world waiting. Michael tried to comply. He tried to slow down, but the feeling inside him did not leave. It deepened. One evening, after a long rehearsal, Michael sat alone on the stage. The arena was empty, seats stretching into darkness. He whispered, "I can't keep running." Joseph watched from the side, unseen. He had never felt so helpless. Days later, Joseph found Michael in the garden before dawn, staring at the horizon. "I feel like I'm saying goodbye to pieces of myself," Michael said. Joseph sat beside him. "You're saying hello to life." Michael smiled sadly. "I hope so." But that hope was fragile, because forces beyond love, beyond family, beyond promises were closing in. And Joseph could feel it. The storm was building. And the next choice Michael made would change everything. By the time June 2008 arrived, Joseph Jackson felt like he was living inside a countdown no one else could see. Michael kept rehearsing. The world kept demanding. The schedules kept tightening like a noose, polite, professional, necessary. And every time Joseph looked into his son's eyes, he saw the same thing behind the famous face, a quiet surrender fighting against a stubborn will to endure. On the surface, Michael smiled. He joked with dancers, complimented the band, asked if the lights could be softer, if the stage could feel more like a dream. He told people he was fine. But Joseph noticed what others missed. Michael's hands would tremble when he thought no one was watching. He would stare too long at nothing. He would flinch at sudden sounds, like his nerves were stretched thin. And at night, the silence swallowed him whole. Joseph tried to tighten the circle around his son. Fewer people, fewer medications, fewer late nights. He tried to do what he had never done well before. Protect Michael without controlling him. But the machine surrounding Michael's career didn't understand the difference. One evening, after a long rehearsal in Los Angeles, Michael didn't return to his trailer right away. He stayed on stage, alone, sitting at the edge with his feet hanging over the drop. The arena was empty and huge, a cavern of seats waiting to be filled. The stage lights were dim, making the space feel like a church after midnight. Joseph watched in the shadows, careful not to announce himself. Michael's voice carried softly through the empty air. "You know what's crazy?" Michael said, as if speaking to the darkness itself. "When people scream your name, it sounds like love, but sometimes it feels like they're pulling pieces off you." Joseph stepped closer. "Who are you talking to?" Michael didn't jump. He just smiled faintly, like he had known his father was there. "You," Michael said. Joseph moved to the edge and sat beside him, the way fathers and sons do when words are hard. Michael stared out at the empty seats. "Dad, I'm tired and the way sleep doesn't fix." Joseph's jaw tightened. "Then we stop, we cancel things, we breathe." Michael shook his head slowly. "They won't let me." Joseph's voice sharpened. "Who is they?" Michael exhaled, a sound that almost became a laugh. "The world, the contracts, the expectations, the version of me people want to own." Joseph turned toward him. "You're not owned." Michael looked back, and the sadness in his eyes hit Joseph like a punch. "Then why do I feel like I'm trapped?" Joseph didn't have a clean answer. He only had fear and love, and a lifetime of mistakes trying to make themselves useful. He put a hand on Michael's shoulder. "Listen to me. We're going to make this safe. We're going to do it right." Michael nodded, but it was the kind of nod someone gives when they don't want to fight anymore. They left the arena in silence. That night, Michael went home and did everything the family had asked, ate a little, drank water, tried to settle down. His team reported he was calm. They said he seemed better. Joseph wanted to believe them. But around 2:30 a.m., the phone rang. Joseph sat up in bed instantly. He had learned long ago that nothing good arrives at a father's bedside at 2:30 in the morning. "Hello," he said, voice rough with sleep. There was a pause on the other end, breathing shallow and controlled, like someone trying not to collapse. Then Michael's voice came through, low and tight. "Dad, don't hang up." Joseph's chest tightened. "Michael? What's wrong?" Another pause, a faint rustle, as if Michael had shifted position. Then, in a whisper that sounded too steady to be panic and too fragile to be calm, he said, "It's happening again." Joseph swung his legs out of bed, heart pounding. "Where are you?" "At home," Michael said. "In my room." "What do you mean happening?" Joseph demanded. Michael's breathing quickened. "My heart, it feels like it's trying to leave my body. And my hands are cold. And He stopped, swallowing hard. "I keep seeing the same thing." Joseph grabbed his shirt and keys with shaking hands. "I'm coming." Michael's voice sharpened suddenly, urgent. "No, listen. Just listen. I need you to hear me." Joseph froze, one foot already in his shoe. "I'm hearing you." Michael's next words came out like a confession he had been holding back for years. "I said it before and you got mad. But I'm not saying it to scare you." Joseph's throat went dry. Michael cut him off. "Dad," he whispered, "I'm going to die." Joseph felt the world tilt. "Don't," he said, voice breaking. "Don't say that." Michael's voice cracked. "I can feel it. I can feel the edge of it." Joseph forced his breath to steady. "You're having an anxiety attack. That's what this is. We'll get you through it." Michael laughed once, a tiny sound with no humor. "It's not anxiety," Michael said. "It's certainty." Joseph's hands clenched into fists. "Certainty isn't a symptom." Michael's breathing stuttered. "Then why do I feel like I'm saying goodbye?" Joseph swallowed the grief rising in his throat and replaced it with anger. Because anger was easier than fear. "You are not saying goodbye," Joseph snapped. "You hear me? You are not leaving. Not like that. Not now." Michael fell silent. For a second, Joseph thought the call had dropped. Then Michael spoke again, softer, almost childlike. "Do you remember when I was little," he said, "and I would look at you before the show, just to see if you were proud?" Joseph's eyes burned. Yes. Michael's voice trembled. I used to think if I was perfect, you'd never leave me. Joseph's jaw tightened painfully. Michael, and now, Michael whispered, I'm older and I'm still trying to be perfect, but I'm the one who feels like I'm leaving. Joseph's breath hitched. He heard it then, the sound beneath Michael's words. Not drama, not attention, not manipulation. A deep, exhausted plea. Joseph's voice dropped, suddenly gentle. Listen to me. Look at me in your mind. I'm right there with you. Michael inhaled shakily. I can't breathe right. You can, Joseph said, steady now. In through your nose. Slow. Hold. Out through your mouth. Michael tried. Joseph listened, counting under his breath, guiding him like he would guide a frightened child. There you go, Joseph murmured. That's it. Michael's breathing steadied slightly, but his voice remained haunted. Dad, he whispered, if something happens to me, don't let them turn me into a rumor. Joseph's stomach dropped. What are you talking about? Michael's voice turned sharper, more focused. Promise me you'll protect my children. Promise me you'll protect my story. Promise me you'll tell them I love them more than anything. Joseph's eyes filled. He had spent decades being the man who pushed, who demanded, who drove. And now his son was asking for protection instead of performance. Joseph's voice broke on the next words. I promise. Michael exhaled a long, shaky breath. Say it again. Joseph swallowed. I promise, Michael. A pause. Then Michael said, Dad, I need to tell you something I've never said out loud. Joseph leaned forward, as if that could bring him closer across the distance. Tell me. Michael hesitated, then spoke in a whisper that sounded like it was being pulled from somewhere deep inside his chest. I used to hate you. Joseph closed his eyes. The words hurt, but they didn't surprise him. Michael continued quickly, as if afraid he'd lose the courage. I hated what you did. I hated how scared I was. I hated how lonely I felt. And I hated myself for still wanting your approval. Joseph didn't speak. He couldn't. Michael's voice shook harder. But tonight I don't hate you. Joseph opened his eyes, staring into the dark. What do you feel? He asked quietly. Michael swallowed. I feel like I finally understand you. Joseph's chest tightened. You don't have to understand me. Michael whispered, I do, because if I don't, I'll die with it stuck in my throat. Joseph's hands trembled. Michael inhaled sharply, then said the words Joseph never expected to hear, words that landed like a final gift and a final wound at the same time. I forgive you. Joseph's breath stopped. The room around him, the bed, the walls, the darkness, felt suddenly too small to contain the emotion ripping through his chest. He had imagined many versions of how his life would end. He had never imagined his son forgiving him in the middle of the night, sounding like he was standing on a cliff. Joseph's voice came out raw. I don't deserve that. Michael's whisper was steady. I'm not giving it because you deserve it. I'm giving it because I can't carry it anymore. Joseph stared at the floor, tears sliding down his face before he even realized he was crying. Michael, he said, barely able to speak, I'm sorry. On the other end, Michael went quiet. Then a small sound, half sob, half breath, escaped him. I just wanted you to love me, Michael whispered. Joseph squeezed his eyes shut. I did, he said. I did. I just didn't know how to show it without breaking things. Michael's breathing softened. For a brief moment, the storm and the call eased. Then Michael's voice shifted again, suddenly alert, suddenly distant. Dad. Joseph's spine stiffened. What? What is it? Michael whispered. Someone's here. Joseph's blood turned cold. Who? He demanded. I don't know, Michael said, voice low. I heard a door. Joseph's heart slammed. Are you alone? Michael didn't answer immediately. Then, barely audible, he said, I thought I was... Joseph stood so fast the chair scraped the floor. Michael, listen to me. Lock your door. Right now. Michael's breathing quickened again. Dad, A faint sound came through the phone. A second voice. A shuffle. A muted knock? Joseph's entire body went rigid. "Michael," he shouted. "Say something." The line went quiet, too quiet. Then Michael whispered one last sentence, so soft it barely carried. "Dad, it's the same feeling." And the call abruptly ended. Joseph stood frozen. Phone pressed his ear, hearing nothing but dead air. His hand shook violently as he dialed back. No answer. He dialed again. Still nothing. He grabbed his keys, slammed the door behind him, and ran into the night, driving faster than he had in years, the road blurring, his mind screaming one thought over and over. Not my son. Not tonight. And when Joseph finally reached Michael's home, what he found waiting behind, that door would change him forever.